Well, I suppose I can begin by answering a few questions that were posed by David. David, are you here? Thank you. David, does Electron support WebSockets? Yes. I mean, it's just a JavaScript application for all intents and purposes. So if you just include socket.io, just like anything else, and open up a socket connection to a server, it works just like any other JavaScript application.
A dialog where the user opens the ports you want to use for that on their OS, or does it just work some other way?
Going out, I don't know. I haven't used it.
Okay.
But I would assume you're under the same constraints as trying to set up any other JavaScript project to connect to something else via WebSockets.
It literally is like having a Chrome browser attached to a Node instance. You have both of them. You can use it. You can use WebSockets.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Either using the Node client library or in browser using the WebSockets.
The next question was, is there a way to do system-wide keyboard shortcut listeners even while the OS is focused on another app? Yes, with a plugin. So there are plugins for that. Can you do custom interactive OS level notifications with additional content, custom sizes, and shapes asynchronously while the user is busy doing other apps? If not, can you do regular static OS notifications that way at least? Yes, but with caveats. The caveats are, and first it's with a plugin, and you have to deal with the way the operating systems handle it. Linux only allows you to do a little bit of text and an image. That's it. Mac also only allows you to do a little bit of text and an image.
So
disappointing.
You can like text messages with a text input, that's OS only.
Mac does have the ability to add and this is very new that they just added, the ability to put in a little form within that, so you can like reply back to somebody within the notification. But that's Mac specific. And then Windows actually just put out their new API for notifications, and it's pure HTML5. You can do anything you want with it. You can make them big, you can make them small, you can use all the colors you want, do whatever you want.
I mean, the basic answer to that should just be you can do anything that the native operating system would, APIs let you do, because you're calling native operating system APIs, and then someone in a plugin is wrapping those calls for you to make it nice.
Within
so
Electron, yeah.
Across platforms.
Right.
But you're just living on the Mac side, you're literally just creating an NS notification instance and then filling out whatever they let you fill that if you were doing that in Xcode or otherwise, right?
Yeah, and if you want to see that in action, just load Slack. Slack is an Electron application that does system notifications. So there you go. There's an example of it running. All right.
You have two options for that I'm aware of as well. One is if you're using the web notification API, that's how you get the really simple interface into the operating system independent thing. If you really, really want that HTML5 type of a notification thing, your Electron app can run in the background and it can open up any window it wants to and position it wherever it needs to on the page.
That's kind of what I was leaning towards. I need to have like rich content under, including like half of a web page. You're saying you can just randomly render without exposing the main app window, any other fragment.
Right. You can build a taskbar no, you can just do it.
That's exactly what I want.
Yeah, it's more work, but you can do it. But you're literally creating your own window and positioning it.
Completely Chrome-less. It just looks like a notification for all intents and purposes, but it's not.
You can do it. You can do it. It's called frameless in the browser window API for Electron.
Don't get ahead of me. It's part of my lecture.
Sorry, it's my fault for giving away all the. Yeah. All right. And for having a presentation.
Yep, we're done. Let's go.
Is not working.
Okay, so who remembers, while we're working on this, who remembers Electron 101? Edmundo, a couple others. So do I need to go back over how to install a basic Electron application?
I wasn't the first one. So
You weren't here for the first one?
Yeah, I'd love to see it, but yeah, exactly. I don't want to derail it.
All right. So just use your laptops and create a new project directory wherever you create your project directories. npm init/y, same as any other project. Or not /y, -y. And then do npm install --save Electron.
Is that globally installed, or do you need to do that in the directory?
No, it's not, it's in the directory. It's not global. I did not say mark G.
One more time there.
It is npm install --save Electron.
Using to install Electron as a dependency of itself.
Did you install it globally?
It's possible in the past, a long time ago.
Ah, bummer.
Do you have a project called Electron?
That's the folder name,
Okay, so it's probably complaining about that. You probably want to name your project something like
Electron test.
food.
Let me do that. Yeah. Food and name it. That's
Totally random name.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, it's just.
Get the skills. Do that for that.
It looks like that. Cool.
Okay, so then go ahead and create your index.js. .js. Just in that same directory. And then you're going to start out, and sorry, we're just going through this really quick, with const electron equals require electron.
I doubt this will make a difference. Get a shot.
Go Bluetooth or go wireless. Oh, just go the.
Go with the USB adapter and see.
I don't know. I've used this frequently enough that I know it works.
Yeah, no, I don't doubt it. Don't doubt it. You know what? You have DisplayPort as well.
Do I?
Yeah.
Cool.
What would we put in our characteristics email? Sorry.
Const electron equals require electron. Within the require, it's in ticks, so require electron. And I use a lowercase electron for the name. So const electron equals require electron, both lowercase.
Electron in right?
Right. All right, then the very next line, you're going to do const, then open bracket, and write app, A-P-P, and then close curly brace. So I said bracket, I meant curly braces. So open curly brace, app, close curly brace, equals electron. So we're going to dereference, see a little bit of ES6 syntax, we're going to dereference app off of the electron object. With me so far? Okay. Add one more. After app, comma, browser window with a capital B, capital W. So we're destructuring the browser window and app off of that same electron object. So just app, comma, browser window. Oh, that's very low tech. I'm sure I could. It's going to take a lot longer.
It will. I mean, I'm just saying while we're figuring this out, but.
Okay. Last time we just used a different laptop, and I just played it by ear out of my Git repository. I can do that again.
Browser window.
Yep. So const open curly brace app, comma, browser window, close curly brace equals electron. So we're just dereferencing those two objects, the app object, which is all lowercase, and the browser window object, which is capital B, capital W, no space. All right, we ready so far?
We'll see.
We'll see. All right, here, I'll let you play with that. And I will wander over here with this. I am hungry for knowledge today, right? All right. Huh? So,
looks like we're taking out app and browser with the demonstration. I thought you put that one. Yeah. Oh. Yeah, we should be able to. Otherwise, it's a file here. We did this too many times.
We are working in the file app.js, right?
was that in Mundo?
That is the code in the app, in the file app.js?
Index.js, yeah.
Index.js, okay.
Or app.js. You can call it whatever you want. So the first line is const electron require electron, and then const app browser window equals electron. So here's the question. How many people are more interested in seeing 101 again instead of moving on to 102? I see 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean,
I'm especially interested in anything that includes how to build it for multiple operating systems, but that's my personal preference.
well, I have a lot of that in my code that I was planning to share today. If we can get it up. In fact, let me just get you the link to my code so you guys can pull that up. And you can just look at it where it is. D&D app, branch, menus. Okay, objects, templates. Okay, so here's a URL. Direct your browsers to this URL, if you please.
All right, ready.
Are you ready? All right, the URL is github.com
All right.
/ penguinman98 with a capital P, capital M, no spaces. Penguinman98 / DND-app, all lowercase. DND-app, all lowercase. / tree, because we're going into a branch. And then / presentation -1 -menus.
So the repo is the Electronist.
Menu or menus?
Menus, plural.
What is the name of the repo?
So github.com / penguinman98 / DND-app,
Okay, in the app.
DND-app
Okay.
/ tree / presentation -1 -menus. When you open this up, you should have two folders, an objects folder, a templates folder, a gitignore, and an index.js. Who's got that? Everybody that wants to see it's got it? All right, go ahead and open up that index.js, and let's just talk about that for a minute. All right. Now you're free to copy this, any part of this, into your own apps. But let's look at line 1, const electron, require electrons. That's going to load our primary library into a variable called electron. Line 2, we're going to dereference a couple of things that we're going to play with today, called app, browser window, menu, and Ipc main. Now I was just going to do browser window to start with, but since we're looking at my code, they're all there. Next is gun. You don't need to worry about that. That's just a simple it's just a simple library that I was using. It's a databasing system. It's real time and over the internet. If you've been to any of my lectures, all of my lectures, I always mention it because I think it's pretty awesome. But in this particular app, all I'm using it for is a very simple persistent data storage. So that's all it's doing. You don't need to worry about that. And local data is a gun. And then a character object is one of my objects called character. If you look in the characters or in the objects directory, there's a simple file called character.js. And you'll notice that is a very vanilla Node.js module. There's no surprises in there. All right. Now, what do you guys know about Electron? If I'm just going to go back to Electron 101, let's start off with what is Electron?
It's Electron allows you to use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to create desktop applications that will be able to run in Linux, Windows, or Mac.
Perfect. Building desktop applications. We've gone all so far in bringing everything to the web. All the applications, all the important things have all gone to the web. And now it's starting to flow back the other direction. We're starting to go back to the desktop and say, hey, wait a minute. We used to have a lot of power in those applications. And now when we just running it in JavaScript and HTML and the internet, we're kind of really limited in what we can do. So let's put the full power of the desktop back to work. And that's what Electron does. But we don't want to learn any new language. Let's use this JavaScript, CSS, HTML. We already have renderers that will render those. So somebody went in and pulled the rendering engine out of Chrome, the V8 rendering engine, and said, why don't we just make a platform out of this? And that's Node.js. Everybody's familiar with Node.js? A platform that just parses JavaScript. It can do everything that a browser can do. And then you combine that with the Electron, which is a library that just exposes or interfaces with the operating system, and then you have desktop applications rendered by the Chromium engine in a browser window.
When you say the full power of the desktop, can you do things like take a microphone and record audio?
Yes.
Is there anything you can't do?
If a desktop can do it, this can do it. If it's not been written yet, plugins will be made. And if the plugin's not there, write it. Make $1 million selling it. Why not? Get on top of that stuff.
Pending to the WebRTC libraries, which Chrome supports, and therefore I believe they're available within Electron. Because part of what's going on with Electron is you have not just the Node runtime, but you also have the Chromium browser runtime. The two are married together, so you have basically anything you can do in Chrome can be done within Electron.
So a lot of times Chrome will prompt for access, like for microphone or webcam and things like that. Can you override those prompts in Electron so that it has instant access to it? Or do you still have to go through those?
Since Electron is a desktop application, it just has access to them.
Even if you're using the web APIs?
I believe that if the operating system restricts access to other programs, just regular desktop programs, to where you have to have a prompt to ask for permission to access that hardware, then yes, Electron will have to go through the same hoops, because it is just a desktop application running on your operating system, just like any other. As for overriding it, I don't know. I don't know if there's any way to program it to do sudo so that you don't have to ask permission. I'm not sure on that one. That's a good question.
Does Electron have any sort of mobile capabilities, kind of like how React Native or something like that would?
Exactly. That, yes. Yeah, that's what I meant to say. Yes. Yes, actually it does. And Slack is a great example of that. It's an app that's written once and deployed on either the mobile phone or on the desktop just by using Electron. So you can write an app in Electron that looks just like an app that runs in a phone. And you can build a little icon, put it on somebody's phone, and they double click it, and for all they care, they're running an application that runs native in their phone, And they don't know it's Electron code, but it runs. And then you can do the same thing with your desktop application. You can compile it, run it as an executable, put the little button on your desktop, and then you can double click it and it runs the application just like it was a native application on the computer. Same code. That's what makes it beautiful. That's one of the best things about it. So Slack, again, is a great example. Discord also is one that's an Electron application. Twitch is an Electron application. You're familiar with Twitch?
No. It's what all the gamers stream.
Right.
I want to make sure I'm just getting this right. So basically, Electron is not hiding, but it's posting. If you open an app on your computer or phone, you're opening a Chromium-based window.
Could be. If the app is written that way.
Right.
There is an Electron loader on iOS or Android.
Well, just
the
right.
way that you're saying, I think what is that JavaScript through either PhoneGap or React Native is ported to the mobile platforms. But I don't think Electron for mobile, either iOS or Android.
Well, you can emulate it because it's just running in a browser. So when you double click that icon on the phone, it just loads a browser. So it's loading the Chrome browser, Chromium browser,
Okay.
and then just running the app within that browser.
Is there a name for that? Can I Google?
Electron. It's an Electron app.
My Googling says that I can't find
That's what I was asking.
Can you build
So
Electron for iOS or Android? Like, is that a target or is that
I haven't been aware of Electron for iOS or Android.
in my
But
knowledge, would
it just runs in the browser,
yeah,
though.
your
What's
JavaScript.
that?
It just runs in the browser. So if you built an application and you execute it on the phone, it would just load in the browser and run in the browser.
Yes, but that wouldn't be the same as Electron. You'd have to have you'd have to write a web app that can run either in, and if you're doing that, then you could build the same web app that could run in a React Native or PhoneGap type Cordova type environment, and in the browser and in Electron. But the Electron runtime, as far as I'm aware, is not built to run on iOS or Android, particularly because iOS and Android are unlikely to allow Node or a runtime like that to run on them through their developer requirements, because they don't like custom APIs like that.
I think
Right.
Electron more is like a target, just like PhoneGap or React Native would be a target for your JavaScript. Is the way I think about it.
Well, see, the way you architecture Electron application is you create a separation between the part that interfaces with your operating system and the part that's the app. It's just like a web app, and you can keep those two separate so that the web app can actually be just a web app and just runs in a browser without having, even without the desktop that Electron exposes the connection to. Without those resources, it can still run as a standalone web app. And then all you have to do is tell your Android device or your iPhone device to load that website URL in a browser, and it just executes the app in the browser. It's not downloading Electron. It's just running the app, the web app part of the program
Then I just
in the
argue with
browser.
the syntax of saying that Electron could run it, because it's just JavaScript could run in your browser. And then
Right.
you package that to Electron to run across Windows, Mac, and Linux.
I think we're saying the same thing.
I think so too.
Okay. Yay!
Well, yeah, I have my Mac works. For some reason, my Windows laptop doesn't.
Our system loves me. All right. So the next thing to notice in the code here is the app on ready. And that's just standard listener syntax, no surprises there. You have the app object, that is Electron, and it's going to build itself, it's going to do some bootstrapping. And when it's finished, it's going to run this ready event to let you know it's okay to start running your app. All right.
I'm just trying it out. I tend to be picky about that laptop.
Please work. Please? Please?
I'm not going to be that picky.
if you put window P to send it to the express scene, you're using Windows, right?
I'm using Windows.
Let me see if I can help. There is a chance that you can. There is a chance. Let me see. Window.
My screen went black. I'm not sure what to do.
Usually with window P, you set it to the. Okay. Now let's gonna choose duplicate. And in this precise moment,
It's going to fail again.
Okay, the window.
I love how there's a show up.
Window. The options that we have is screen only, duplicate, extend.
I've tried all four.
Oh,
It doesn't like any of them.
all right. So if that is not sending the extend, that is just an extra screen.
It is what it is.
I tried.
All right, thank you. Can I use your laptop? All right, so moving on. Let's see, pop character select. We're going to, okay, let's look at the pop character select function. Scroll down to the helper functions, and let's just look at that really quick. It's called pop character select. It's about line 65. Now what the pop character select is it's going to be your very basic code for creating a window in Electron. If the type of, and that's just some checking I do to check my variable to make sure it's ready. Windows, dot character select, dot window. I'm going to create a window there. So I assign that to a new browser window. And that's just a simple function call, creation to a constructor. And in the constructor, we're going to pass an object. And that object here contains a width property, a height property, a title property, and a frame property. And you'll see I set the height to 400, the width to 300, the title to choose your character, and the frame to false. What's up?
So it's just another question I forgot to ask earlier, but it's related to what you were just talking about. Do you position your windows mathematically on the person's browser or monitor, or do you have to just let it open where it opens?
Yep, I'll get to that. That's a later part of the presentation. So in this first part, it's just going to create it in the center of the screen. And it's going to be 300 wide, 400 width. It's going to have a title of choose your character and frame equals false. What frame equals false does for us is I don't want the user to close the app at this point. So by saying frame equals false, the standard close button and file menu and everything are not there. It's just a window with no frame with some app content in it. And it just has a list of my characters that I can select from. And they're just buttons that you can press a button. But this gives you a good idea, a good example of how to do that. I mean, I've got this complicated windows.characterselect.window thing going on, but you can just do a variable main window equals new browser window. And that's how most people will do it on their first app. It's just let browser window or main window equal new browser window and then pass it that object. So why don't you guys who are following along, building your own apps, do that right now. The first thing in your app on is just create a new main window. So variable or let main window or equal a new browser window and then pass it an object with some stuff. Now to get this to actually run, we need to make a few modifications to our, what's the name of the file? It's the JSON file, the package JSON. We're going to have to make a few modifications to that so that we can teach it to actually run the application. Is that in the repo here? I don't see it. It's not. So I will have to write this out. This is fun, right? All right, so in your package JSON, find the scripts area. there's a scripts object, and it's going to have the colon and then a curly brace open, and I want you to wipe out everything that's in there and just add quote electron, close quote, colon, quote, electron space dot, close quote. I'm going to write that up here on the board so that you can see that. Yep, in your package JSON. Just blow all the stuff that's in there. That's the test stuff. Yeah, you don't need that. What? It should just be package JSON. If your package JSON is locked, something's going on, and I don't know.
Package lock JSON is from
Yeah, right.
So I have a laptop here.
Awesome. All right, so replace your scripts with this. Electron space dot. Thank you so much for allowing me to use your device here. I do apologize. It seems like every time I come here we have trouble with the system. It doesn't work out.
Yeah, I'm going to see if I can figure it out. Those other days when I'm not in the middle of a bunch of people with my Windows machines.
Right.
You said space dot.
Space dot dot.
In other words, I don't think it's your machine.
Excellent. I have something on the screen I can show you.
Yay!
Okay, so we have the app on ready, and I have another window that I'm creating here. I'm going to call my quick reference window. And you can look at that code. It has a lot of the same things, but on this one I have framed to true because I want the user to be able to close this one. This is my main window app, our main app window, and so I'm going to allow them to close this one. I'm planning on having a lot of apps. So what I'm writing is a D&D app, and the concept behind it is basically I want to have a panel that has my spells, a panel that has my abilities, a panel that has my hit points, a panel that has my equipment. So I have all these frames, all these windows running around. And so rather than just create individual variables for them all, I created a object or an array to hold them, and that's what you see at the top here, the windows equals. I started with a simple array of 4. But that's just for me in my application. For yours, you're going to probably do something more simple. Most applications only need 1 or 2 windows. But it's useful for the presentation to be able to do multiple windows because it's important to be able to talk between the windows. And I'm going to teach you how to do that. Because for all intents and purposes, when you create a window, it's going to create a brand new instance of a browser, a Chromium browser. And when I create a second one, it's going to create a second one. And they're 2 standalone, completely independent processes. How do I send information between them? Because I'm going to need to, especially if I start making changes to my character. If I change my character's name, I need it to reflect in all the different panes. If I change his strength stat, I want to see that reflected in all the other ones because it's going to change all his die rolls and everything. So if that's stuck in just one of those browser windows, I'm in big trouble. So how are we going to do that? Is that where we'd like to go next? Or would we like to explore a little bit more of what's going on here? Look at line 27 really quick before we go too far into talking between windows. Line 27, line 28, and line 29. Line 27 is how we're going to load an HTML file. Of course, you're going to have HTML files. If you're serving something to the user, I mean, you can serve just plain text, but it's a lot easier to organize it in HTML files. I mean, after all, that's what we're trying to do, right? HTML, CSS. So that's our very basic load URL. We're using ES6, string templates. So we use the grave instead of the ticks or double ticks, and I love it so much. I really wish everybody would start using that, because then you can put ticks and quotes. You don't have to escape them all the time. I love it. Dollar bracket is a new syntax in those template strings that allow you to just embed a variable in the string, the way you did in PHP with double quotes, but you can't do with single quotes. So you can do that in here. So this dir name is just a token that's available within the Electron to tell you what directory it's in. So dir name, templates, quick reference, HTML. No surprises there. It says go find the quick reference HTML and load it. And we can look at what's inside the quick reference HTML, but we'll see that just a minute. The next thing I want to notice here is the Windows quick reference window on closed event. If somebody were to close my window, what do I do? Now, if you just leave it by the default, it'll just destroy that object. But if you've got references to it here, maybe you don't want to destroy it. Maybe you just want to hide it, so that you can then bring it back up later when the person says, open that back up. I can say, oh, well, I didn't really close it. I just hid it. Or if you have variables in here that are pointing to that window and you want that window after it's closed to be garbage collected, then you need to set that reference to null, which is what I do here. So say take that quick reference window and set it to null. That way, that window instance can be garbage collected because I don't have any more references to it. Is everybody following me so far? Nod, nod. And then I run this little app close function that I wrote. And that's later down in the file, but it basically just loops through all the windows that I have and makes sure to close them all before it closes.
Just a real quick question that I came up with. So say you're doing like a D&D app like this, and a character wants to save progress. Are you using Chrome's local storage to try to save stuff into, or how are you saving that stuff?
There's a myriad of different ways you can do it. You can use the file system, FS, and you can just access the file system on the computer. This is a desktop application, so you're not limited to the local storage restrictions of 5 megabytes. You've got the full hard disk, 5 gigabytes, 16 gigabytes, 5 terabytes, I don't care. Yeah, you can store anything you want. Now the way I'm choosing to do it is in a JSON data store. And you'll see that's what Gun does for me. Gun is a persistent data store.
Okay.
So we'll get to that in a minute. It's not difficult. And Gun is really great because it's so darn easy. You just include it, put stuff in it, there it is. You can just pull it right back out again. It's so great. You never have to worry about where it's putting it because it's just in a file. It's actually in the directory here, just called data.json. And it just grows and grows and grows as you add data to it. I mean, it's not the most efficient way to do it, and they've got this whole Radix storage engine that's so much more efficient, but I decided not to go with anything fancy, because this is just a very simple application. The data.json will be just fine. And then this last one here is Windows Quick Reference Window Hide. Now, I have options here. I can run the .hide here just to hide this new browser window from the user at this point, or I can also pass it in as a parameter to that function, and you'll see that later. I added that in later where I got rid of that line and just added it in as one of those parameters up there. But yeah, just calling .hide, and I bet you can't guess what the one is for showing it afterward. Any guesses? Yeah, .show. All right, so let's move on and look at this quick reference HTML. So everybody go in your browsers, follow me. We're going to go back to the D&D app. We're going to go into the templates and go to the character select. Now, other than the obvious little bit of CSS here, one CSS rule, woo! Here's some basic HTML and some JavaScript. So there's my characters. They're just buttons. And then I have a loop that goes through my buttons and adds listeners to them. And it says listening for a click on the button. If the button is clicked, then I'm going to log that I'm doing it, because I put logs in everything while I'm building. I don't know about you guys, but I log everything while I'm building something. The last thing I do is remove my console logs. All right, if the event, okay, so add event listener, this is very standard syntax. The event object comes here, the event target, dataset char, and that's because I put the data char in a data attribute, and so you access it with dataset char. If you've never done data attributes, they're beautiful. Use them, they're good. It drives me crazy to get these big fancy plugins and everything, and they're relying on classes. I'm like, no, use data attributes, they're so much better. Because you can access them in JavaScript like this. You don't have to use jQuery to find that crap. All right. If it's character 0, I'm going to create a new one. And if it's character 0, I'm going to load the character. And this is where we start to listen, where we start to see the Ipc renderer. What is an Ipc renderer? That's the next important thing to talk about. IPC, or inter-process communication, is how Node talks between its various windows. So when you start the Electron app, you have to realize, you have to visualize the architecture that you're building here. Is you have one JavaScript Electron app here, and it's spawning these window processes up here. So it has an attachment out to this one. So that's my windows.quickReference over here. And then it has an attachment out to this one, windows.character select over here. So it points to them. It can use those pointers, those variables, the references, to send information between and receive information from its various components. So let's see, line 20, or line 19 and 20, const electron require electron. Now, how many people just got a chill up their spine reading that line? I know I did the first time I saw that. We were doing requires in an HTML document. What? I know, right? Stay on. Okay. I know, right? Maybe something wrong with that. Anyway, line 20. So we're just going to do the same thing we did in the first file. So we load in Electron, and then we dereference the Ipc renderer and remote off of it. I didn't end up using remote. I was just experimenting with it. No, actually I did reuse it. I used it down here. Remote get current window. And what the remote does for you is it gives you a handle to that window so that you in the JavaScript can actually access the window, and you can listen to things like close events, minimize events, maximize events, all through this remote get current window. So that's a fun thing to look at. But then the important one is Ipc Renderer Send. And the syntax is kind of a little funny, but you get used to it after you've played with it for a little while. The first token is just a string, any arbitrary string. What?
Sorry for interrupting. Just a quick question. Line 26 is just a logger? It's just that you see what's going on?
Yep.
Okay.
Nothing more.
It's because I don't see anything else doing
Yeah.
but just being a logger.
Yep. You'll see loggers all over the place. When I'm building an app, I always log everything.
Yeah.
Although an interesting aspect of that is console inside an HTML document that's being displayed inside a browser window here is going to show up within the console in the dev tools of that particular window.
Oh, no one yet?
Yeah.
Yes. Because these are HTML documents that are being run in a browser window, Chromium, with a Chromium engine. It has the standard dev tools that you would expect in a browser available to you to use to debug it.
That's cool.
And it is,
Butters and consoles and all that.
oh yeah, everything is there.
Like if something magically disappeared. Like, where'd it go?
So the interesting thing about this, though, is that like Electron has a multi-process model where you've got the node process that is running the node code primarily. That is what generated the browser window. That, when you log to its console, will log to your
Browser console.
But inside the browser window, logs are going to go into the browser Windows console that you access through that browser Windows dev tools. So this is one of the reasons why you might use IPC, is you might want to write a logger that instead of putting them into the dev tools, logs it out to your console, because that's where you're used to looking at things, or something else like that. Another important aspect of this is what Joe's doing here is perfectly safe and just fine because he's loading up his own assets locally and knows exactly what that code is and what it's doing. If you're loading up any kind of user content whatsoever, you want to be very careful about what kind of things you expose through remote, because the browser window has somewhat of a sandbox that protects the browser window from hitting the node and therefore the operating system APIs directly. But remote pokes a hole in that sandbox, and so if you can go through it, you can, if you're putting arbitrary user code into that, you could do some things to the computer that a normal browser wouldn't let you do. Sorry for derailing.
No, that's fine. Any comments? I'm perfectly happy to entertain it. Or yeah.
So if you use the debug console like a window or the console, can you attach the Chrome debugging tools to the Node side of it as well?
No, that Node app is just a console app.
Okay.
So it's just running in the console. So anything you log is just going to log to console.
Okay. And then if you were to use the debugging tools for the window and like pause that window, will the calls from the remote just kind of block until you resume, or will it kind of kill your app?
You pause that one window,
Yeah.
but all the others will keep running because they're all independent processes from each other. And if you open up your process monitor, like on your task manager, you'll see separate processes for each of them. They're completely independent. So if you pause one of them, the others keep running. And that's why we use the IPC system, because we don't know. I mean, it would be too much to try to build some kind of synchronous wait for me system and sending information back and forth between these browsers, because they're completely independent running processes. So this is like creating our own custom events. And we're just sending those custom events as asynchronous events, and we're going to pass those between the different windows. So the Ipc Renderer Send is going to send those events over to the main running process of Electron. And one of them is called character:new, and that's just an arbitrary string, but the syntax that has been impressed upon me is noun: verb. So it's a character: and it's new. So create a new one. Character load. And then I'm passing an object with some information here. The CID is the event target dataset character. So that's the character ID that I want to get. So when I'm loading it, send that CID through. So now it's going to create an event, it's going to pass that event, and it's going to put it into the IPC bus and send it on back to the Electron main window. So let's look at that. Let's go back to the Electron main window. All right, back to Electron. Our UI events. Now, Ipc Renderer sends, Ipc main receives. Why they did it this way is anyone's guess. It's just the syntax you have to learn. So Ipc main, and you'll see the Ipc main comes from line 2, where we destructure it off of the Electron object. Ipc main.on, standard syntax for listening for events, character new, do this. And down here, Ipc main.on, character load, do that. No big surprises here. But this is an asynchronous syntax, so as those events come in, the Electron app responds to them and can do its own thing. In this case, I'm going to create a new character, and I'm going to send it some information into its constructor, and then load the character. Now, the character, if you want to flip over to the character and look at that, is no great mystery. The one thing that you'll notice there is the gun that's fetching the data asynchronously. So you create a get request to the gun, say gun get this, and then register a function callback, and then that'll execute that callback as soon as the data is retrieved from the system. So you're not blocked waiting for the system to respond. It's completely asynchronous. And then that's going to come back and load the character. And let's look at what load character does down here. So when we load the character, we're going to look at this window, the quick reference window, and we're going to send that character load event right along back into that other window. So the character select window, Ipc Renderer sent it through to the main Electron process, where it was processed by the character module, and it is now sending that data back, the loaded character, to the other window, to the quick reference window. So Windows quick reference window, send this. I'm going to send this, and I didn't do any checks to see if the window was there, because this is my main process window. If that window is not there, I want to close the app. So I'm just comfortable that that's going to be there. If you can program as cautiously as you want to be and check for everything if you wish. So Windows quick reference, Windows send a character load event and send that character along. And then go ahead and take that quick reference window that we started hidden and show it. So what happens when you load the app is the first thing you see is that first window that just has your character buttons, and you click on a character button and then that goes away. And the thing that kills that is actually back in the HTML file after it sends that Ipc renderer request to the main app. Then it just calls close on itself and just kills itself. So then that goes away, and this new quick reference window then loads up and shows you the name of that character and a filter input that you can use to filter his information. So the concept of the application then is if you wanted to see all the things that were related to strength, you could type str into the filter box and all of those come up. So it's easy to find instead of having to hunt over 3 sheets of different paper, front and back, with scribbles and erasings and all sorts of crazy crap. Do I have money? I just type MONEY and there it is. There's my money. Beautiful. All right. I don't know how many of you are D&D nerds, but to me that's a constant thing. It's a constant battle I'm always waging is the D&D says, roll this. I'm like, I don't know how to do that. I've got to find it somewhere. Oh, there it is. No, wait. Don't I get a bonus to that? But then that's over here. And then I've got this thing that I add to it over here. I'm confused. So that's what this app is meant to do, is just make that so easy. But anyway, I digress. Const main menu. All right, so before we get to slide 61, let's just, if you've installed and run the code to this point without that main menu part, then what you'll get is a main browser window that just has all the things that you would expect from a browser window. The file, view, help, and all those file menu items are all available and ready for you. But when we're doing our application, a lot of times we're going to try to change that because we want the menu to be specific to our application. We don't need half of those things. We don't need to clear cache in our app. We don't need to open up the preferences for the browser in our app. So let's just clear those out. We're going to change the menu. And that's the next part of my lecture, is changing that menu. So who wants to learn how to change a menu? All right. Changing the menu is a bit of a pain in the butt, but when you learn how to do it, it's actually not so bad.
You mean the main menu in line 61?
Yes.
Okay.
What that line is going to do is it's going to say, let's create an object called a main menu, and we'll set that equal to something. We're going to start with menu, which we dereferenced back on line 2 off of the Electron object.
So it's an object, like keys and values.
Huh?
It's an object of keys and values.
Menu is?
Well, the menu, the main menu, what kind of, is an object, like a keys and values?
I'll show you.
Okay.
We'll get there. So the menu is the object within Electron that is responsible for building and maintaining those menus. And then you build from template the menu template. And when you build from template the menu template, it just gives you an object back. It just takes that, you got a JSON string, and I'll show you the structure for that in a minute, and it compiles it into a menu that you can use, but it's not until line 62 when you menu set application main menu that you've actually set that menu in place. And this is so you can have 5 or 6 little menus all around your app and you can swap them as you need them by just calling set application menu to this one, set application menu to this one, now set application menu to this one. Any questions on that? Okay. And that's the only reason why those are two separate function calls. So let's look at what a menu actually looks like in the code. So here's menu template. The menu template, what?
It's an array of objects.
Correct. It's JSON. Starts with an array, and then you have a label, file. That's going to be your first one at the top. And then it has a submenu. So when you click on file, what's going to happen? It's going to open the submenu. The first menu is going to have a label. And then it has these other two properties, a click, which tells it what to do when I click on it, and an accelerator, which is a hotkey. And if you look at my accelerator, process platform equals Darwin. This is the first time you start to see where we have to change things because things are slightly different on different operating systems. Darwin is the platform that is behind OS X. So when you ask, is the process.platform, which is just a token within Electron, is that equal to Darwin? You're basically asking, is this OS X? Are we on a Mac? And if it is, then I want the hotkey to be Command S. But in all other cases, I want the hotkey to be Control S. So when I have my application open and I press Command S on a Mac or Control S, I want it to open up the switch character dialog.
So Darwin is in the OS X code? Like exclusive? Like is there going to be any time where Darwin might throw it off to your own Windows? Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to double check on that.
Yeah.
So if you look at the Node documentation for process, it'll tell you the platform is going to be consistent for OS X.
Okay.
It will be Darwin.
Got it.
And then,
Same API.
right. And for any Windows operating system, it'll return Win32.
Okay.
I'm not sure what it will return for Linux. I never bothered looking it up. Because if you can identify the other two, then you can just say all those others are whatever else is left. All right. So then we have a quit, is the next one down, and that's Command Q or Control Q. And on click, you have quit. So it's very simple when you look at it. I mean, you just have a file. When you click on that, it opens the submenu that has two items, an open characters, and a quit. The problem that you run into when you create your own menu this way, though, is that everything else that was there before is now gone. So your view that has your developer tools in it is not in the menu anymore. Uh-oh. How do I open that? Well, even the hotkey won't work anymore. You got rid of it. When you created your own menu, you wiped out all the other menus that the system was going to build for you and just put in your own. So all the hotkeys are wiped. And all the other menu items are gone. So what you got to do in this case is you got to put them back as you want them. And that's something they call the role system. So when you're talking about menus and you talk about a role, the menu role is a common menu item that the system provides. And you can say, I just want to have a role of the dev tools. And that's just right down here. Did I use roles? I didn't use the role system. Oh, slap my face and call me stupid. All right, well, I just did it the manual way. But if you go in there, you can replace all of this stuff in the submenu, the label and everything, by just putting role : dev tools. Or you can. I've got a URL saved on my laptop that I can't show you all because of various stuff. That's just Google it. If you just Google the Electron menus roles, and they just have a list of all the different roles of all the different things you can use in your menu template, and just say, so role quit. So that's a quit button. Role view reload. That's a reload button, etc. So you can just put those back one by one as you need them. You can put them back wherever you want them. You can call your Instead of a file menu, I called mine file because it's a pretty standard practice, but I could call it my menu. I could call it start menu. I could call it foo. Call it anything I want. I'm in control. I can build my own menu. I've got the power. It's cool. Now, there's something odd that happens on a Mac, though. It only happens on a Mac when you build menus. See, in a Windows, when you look at a window in a Windows box, the very first thing is File. But if you're on a Mac browser and you look at that bar across the top, what's in the top left corner?
A piece of fruit.
A piece of fruit. So if you just create the file menu as I did there, and you load that menu, you will see nothing in your file menu. It won't be there. You'll have nothing, no menu at all. Why? Because you put it in the same position that fruit's occupying. So this little code here, this Mac fix, if it's a Darwin, if it's OS X, then shift it back a spot. So just add a new element to the front of the array to hold the place for that piece of fruit so that the file menu comes next. So this is a quick little trick to make it work on Macs.
Now, is it going to say Chrome up in the top left corner on a Mac or something like that when you develop this?
This is right.
Or is it going to have your apps?
I have like a manifest file where you can put your own app name and show it there.
Package JSON for to build out the plist for the Mac app. So it shows your name, whatever the running application's name is.
Okay.
He's got it. Yeah. All right. And then, just for kicks and giggles, I went and put the Open Dev Tools back in. And I called it dev instead of what it was there before. And that's just as, hey, stupid, this is dev. So if you are running your production app and you see that dev in the menu, you realize, oh, crap, I just deployed my production in dev mode. So I need to go change my production, change my environment from dev to production. And then you'll write some code that'll say, oh, well then don't load this. Only if the process environment, node environment is production or is not production, then load this. So I'll go and change my environment to production and then that won't show up. Because I don't want people who are running my app to have access to the dev tools. Leave it alone. Don't go tinkering in it. I built it the way I built it on purpose. Don't touch it. You'll break it. Right. All right. So that's basically how to build a menu. And then you just load it. And let's see, where did I load it? I load it right here. So line 61 and 62. That loads the menu. Any other questions on menus? Why did they call it an accelerator? I don't know. It was as good as anything. All right, now, let's move on. Let's see. Presentation 2, tray. All right. So now we're in presentation 2 tray. So I had intended to move on with the, let's run the app, let's show what the app looks like, and then we'll change the Git to the next version and then show you where we're going from here. That way I wouldn't have to write any code while we were talking. But I don't get to do that. So we'll just move on. I decided to make some shortcuts, isMac and isWin, just as a process, do those process checks, so I don't have to have those process checks everywhere I look. I can just ask, is OS X? Okay. isWin? Got it. Just a little cleanup. Now, all of my code is commented because I was going to uncomment it as we talked. So you can see the tray on here. So first I'll start by going to the top and noting that on line 3, I have now included tray, where I didn't include tray before. So what the tray object does is the tray object gives us access to the system tray. In Windows or in Mac, it's up there in that corner. In Windows, it's down there in the corner. That's the system tray. In this application, I've decided that I want to have a tray icon. I want to put an icon in that tray up there, and when the user clicks on it, I want it to do stuff. So that's what tray allows us to do. So line 24, tray equals a new tray. Surprise? No, it's pretty simple. But it takes one parameter, icon path. What's an icon path? It's a URL to an asset, a picture.
I do have a question, but it's not in this line. It's in the one in the very top.
Okay.
Well, actually, we need to. It's when you are importing. Okay, right. Line number 3.
Line number 3.
I do understand what's going on, but my question, basically, you from Electron, you are importing those specific methods of the library Electron. But the question that I have is, why not just import the whole thing? Is too much memory wasted?
I don't want to pollute my global namespace.
Okay, so basically, can you say that again? So
I do not wish to pollute the global namespace with things I'm not using.
Okay.
So when you use the dereferencing syntax here, I'm saying const app equals electron.app.
So basically, you're just grabbing the elements that you know that you're going to use.
Yep.
It's because I do understand this line very well, but I just don't understand what is the difference. Why don't you bring the whole thing? But you mentioned that it's to not pollute the
global namespace.
Okay.
Technically, he has brought the whole thing in as Electron, and he could refer to these things as electron.app, electron.browser window.
Yeah.
But that would be annoying. Now he's got a convenient handle on the things he's going to use most.
Yeah, well, personally, I like more the annoying way, but I just wanted to know why.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, it's just bringing them into the global namespace so they're a little easier to use.
Okay.
Cleaning it up.
Yeah, cleaning up is nice. And I was going to get to that. My last part of this was in refactoring it, putting everything out in other files. But I included one, which is the character, so you can see how I did that. But if you look at the GitHub, you'll see there's 3 branches, presentation 1, presentation 2, and presentation 3. If you want to see what the app looked like when I was done with it and ready for this presentation, go to presentation 3 and just look at it. And you'll see that I did some, I had it all ready to refactor it out in the whole tray part. I'm going to put the tray part all here into the index.js, and then for the third part of my lecture, I was going to factor that all out into another file. So you'll see all that if you go to the third presentation. The file is there.
It's 10 minutes after 8. How's everybody feeling?
I'm scared to wrap this up.
Good but cold.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so cold.
What's going on with the AC in this room?
Welcome to my day of work every day.
Summer, winter?
Doesn't matter.
Jeez.
Well, it's not that it's always cold, it's that it's always not what you want. So,
Yeah.
because of the way it works, you're somebody else's thermostat somewhere is trying to balance it.
Right.
What's the thermostat set to? Just enough to make Aaron mad.
Yeah. Everybody on my row is, somebody's got a jacket, somebody else is like, oh no.
Got a little space heater down there.
Right? There's a lot of that.
I'm just going to feel we might be in the wrong spot. I'm feeling like I'm straight on.
You probably are getting AC. Each of these black lines are being.
All right. I wanted to bring up something with tray here. And I just wanted to point out when I'm doing the tray on click, that's listening to clicks on the tray icon. And the second, and this arrow function here coming off of it brings in 2 parameters. First is the event, and the second is the bound. So you guys asked me, how do you know how big the window is or where to position it? That bounds tells you where the click event comes from. So you know where the XY of the click, where the tray was. And you can use that XY to do some basic logic to say, well, when he clicked on that tray, did he click on a tray up there? Oh, Well, okay, then obviously if this is on a Windows, they moved their menu to the top. And you can do some logic on that based on where that bounds is. So bounds has two properties, an X and a Y, and that gives you the X and the Y on the screen of the click event. And then if you go to the window, Windows quick reference window, dot get bounds. And the dot get bounds function on a window gives you the height and width of your window. It has two objects, so getBounds.height or getBounds.width. And you can use those to say, well, if the click event happened up there in that corner, and my window is this wide and this tall, then move it to this position X on the screen, and move it to this position Y on the screen, so you can move it where you want it, using set bounds.
So, but independent of the events and stuff and getting their coordinates, does the framework itself of the library have just access to the global monitor values, like how many monitors there are, what resolutions are? Say I want to position like custom notifications on the right third of the screen and use exactly a third of the width. Can you do that, or do you have those?
Yeah, just a little bit of math.
Okay. But you can't get into the values of full monitor resolution.
I'm not sure exactly how to do it, but I think that it might be in that bounds object, if it's going to be anywhere. I'd look in there, but that's a little bit of research on what the actual dimensions of the monitor are. Yeah, I didn't get that far. I wanted to just mention that really quick, since it was asked of me.